And welcome back to redheart.com as well as the Crochet Crowd. I'm your host Mikey, and in today's tutorial we're going to work on this beautiful Afghan together, and this is the Cool Breeze baby Afghan. This measures 38 inches by 42. This pattern is deceptively gorgeous. Now you will look in the pattern and you'll see that the baby is sitting on the Afghan. You don't really get the concept of what's going on in that because the photo is kind of blocking what this Afghan is really doing. And once I did the concept, I'm like, this is gorgeous. And let me just tell you right quickly is that one line here is all you work with, all doing the fans, and then the next one up is just double crochet. So if you know how to double crochet, you can do this, and the fan work is the only section here, and you only have to do it every other line, and this Afghan goes incredibly quickly. So today's yarn we're going to be using the Red Heart Soft Baby Steps. I am telling you that this yarn is phenomenal. It has a shimmer to it. It has a real sense of kind of almost a vibrance, a glow to it. It is a premium acrylic and it is quite fabulous. So without further ado, let's get started on your Afghan right now. So to get started with this, the pattern is provided in the more information of this particular video. You just have to click the link to go get it. So we're going to start off, and it says to chain 105. So we're going to do that. So we're just going to create a slip knot first and then slip in our hook. It says to use the 6.5 millimeter or size K crochet hook today. Just for reference, you'll probably see it anyway. I'm using a 6 or a size J. So we're going to create 105. Remember that this never counts as one. Your stitch work in the very beginning matters to get started, but once you get started, it really, you can kind of flub around if you want to. So let's just begin. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and go all the way to 105. You should know that I am only doing a swatch. I've already created this Afghan, so I'm gonna just do a swatch just to show you how to get the waves started. Okay, so now that you got your 105, I only did 32 just so that you're interested if you're wanting to know what my swatch is. So let's begin. It says foundation row right side, treble into the 5th chain from the hook, 2 trebles into each of the next, etc., etc. So let me get started. So we want to go to the 5th chain. So we just count back. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And we want to treble, and remember trebles, and see how I'm just pushing this down. I want to do that so that I can wrap like this and it doesn't rotate with the wrap. And I'm just going to insert into the 5th one, and I'm going to pull through, and you'll have 4 loops on your hook. Grab through, pull through 2, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. So let's go along in the instructions. It says 2 trebles in each of the next 2 chains. So on the very edge of your Afghan you will have a half like a half wave going on, and this is what's creating what it's creating, I guess. So we're gonna do 2 trebles into the next one. So let's wrap and wrap going into the next chain, and we want to do 1 treble and wrap going into the next chain, or going into the same chain I should say. Very easy. And remember we have to do that 2 times. So we're gonna wrap and we go into the very next one. And wrap and going into the same one. So on the edges of your Afghan, regardless of what side you're working on, you will always end up having really 3 groups of 2 trebles together, and that is just a great starting point if you know that. So let's move along to the next part of this line. So carrying along with the instructions, it says to skip 1 chain, treble into the next chain, and do that 5 times. So this is how it goes. So we're gonna begin to wrap and we want to skip the next chain, go to the second one over and going in, and we do a treble there, and we want to repeat that 5 times. So let's do that again. So wrap and wrap, we skip the next chain, go to the second one over and do the treble again. So wrap and wrap, skip the next chain, go to the second one over like that, and then wrap and wrap, skip the next chain, go to the second over, just like you see here. And when you pull it apart, you see how you have the groups of 2 here together. You should have a total of 5 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're missing 1. So we wrap and wrap, we skip 1 and going over. So if you know the visual and what to look for, it's just always easier than it is to count your stitches all the time. So essentially we have our sides coming in, and you can see that this automatically wanted to pull it going back up in the other direction, so you're starting to see the ridges going on. So let's move along to the next part. So to carry on, we have to skip one more chain, and now we start on the next one, and it says 2 trebles in each of the next 6 chains. So let's wrap and wrap. Okay, so we skip the first one, go to the second, and we want to put 2 there. So wrap and wrap, so same chain, and what this is doing is creating the hump going over top of the wave. So we immediately come into the next one, so we don't skip anymore. So when we're going in the upward direction for when we're going on the over ridge like so, we never skip any stitches on the line, and then everyone gets 2. So wrap and wrap, okay, wrap and wrap. So I'm just providing 2 trebles into each one of the 6 that I'm running into. So the easiest way to look at this is that if you see everything in groups of 2, wrap and wrap, and then you just count 6 groups of 2, you know you've done it. Okay, so you can kind of see it going on here. So you got 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. So essentially I got to do 2 more groups. Just like so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we gotta have 6 groups, so keep going. And there you have it. So you can see that this is the ridge now going up over top, so you have the wave starting to take effect. So we have the top of the ridge, and you can see that the edge is going up and over, and you have here, this is the underside, so this is the one that's sinking down. So what we have to do is that the first side here is that we started with the half, and then we immediately started going down before then coming back up. So now we have just to repeat exactly what you've done here. So it's just very simple as you go across. So we're gonna wrap and wrap, we're gonna skip the first stitch, go to the second, and we're gonna do a treble. And we're gonna wrap and wrap, again skip the next stitch, go to the second. And you remember what I said, how many you're gonna need of these singles? And you need a total of 5. So skip the next one, go into the second one over, wrap and wrap. So my little tips on what to look for actually make it a lot easier for you instead of having to mess up your brain to count too much. So essentially now, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we have that. And so now we're ready then, we've come down, and you can see that it's starting to turn back up. But in this one now, I'm gonna pretend that this is now the very edge of my other side of my Afghan. So you're just gonna continue to go up and down, just like I just showed you. And when you get to the other side, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna skip the next stitch, and you're gonna repeat exactly what you've done on the other side, just like so. So you have a half of an arc going in the down direction, so we have to create the half arc on this side. So we skip the next stitch and do a treble, and we put 2 in there. So it's essentially like we're doing the full arc, but we're only gonna do half. So wrap and wrap, going into the next one, and we're putting 2 into that same one. And so essentially you will be at the end of your chain by the time you get to this very last one here. So this would technically be your end right here. Just like so. And a tip for you too, you could always chain more too. If you don't believe that you might run out of stitches or you're not sure, if you chain a few extra, you can always undo them as well, and a lot of crocheters do that. So here's what your Afghan will look like at this point, and now we're gonna continue on to the next part. So it's very simple. So we're simply just going to change the work, and remember what I said in the intro about every other line being the fan work and the other line is just double crochet. This is how simple it goes. So we're just going to simply on this line, and this will happen every other line in your project, is that you're simply going to chain up 3, and we immediately come into the first top stitch just like so, and we double crochet. So how my Afghan is working is that I have a fan, the stitch that's causing it to go up and down, and then I have a double crochet and then another fan, and then I've thrown in the color white as my next one, which is in the double crochet line. And so you can come up with literally any kind of variables that you want to do with your colors, but as long as you just keep it consistent within yourself, you know, it's pretty cool. So just again going across the solid line, and because you're only double crocheting, it's gonna follow it exactly just how it's doing on the line below. So when we come back, I'm gonna be at the end, and I will turn around and show you how to begin again, and we're gonna do the fans again, and then I'm gonna show you how to change colors later on in this video. So I'm coming all the way to the end of my line, and I just want to finish it off as normal. So just pretending you're doing an Afghan and just double crochet. Don't forget that you have an end chain. So right now we still have this left and this chain. So that means you have 2 stitches left. A lot of new crocheters always think that this little piece here is part of this first one, but it's not. Remember to go in the outside chain, and don't go into the gapping space. Go right into the actual stitch, and then we are done. So let's begin again. We are going to turn your work, and I'm going to show you how to change color in the next line, not this one. So essentially we want to start off with, and we're going to do exactly what we did in the line below. So let's begin. So we're going to chain up 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you have your 4 in, then all you have to do is just treble, and we have to come back to where this is originating, right in the very start one, like that, and that's going to be a treble, like so. So we are going to do half because we're on the side, so it's always going to be a half. So the next 2 stitches will each have 2 trebles each. And this happens every time. So it's not anything you have to change later off. This is just a really easy idea. So now we have our 3 groups in there because it's a half of one of these over here. So once you understand that, makes sense. So essentially we have to skip the first stitch, and we're going to do this downward over here, but now in this line, but we have to maintain what we've already done down here. So we're going to wrap and wrap, and we're going to skip the first one and go to the second. Okay, and then we wrap and wrap and skip the next chain, go to the second. Wrap and wrap, skip the first chain, go to the second. So how many of these are we looking for? If you said the answer is 5, then you are right. Okay, once you have your 5 in just like so, we're now ready to do the overside, but in this area here. So remember, we skipped the first one and then wrap and wrap and go to the second, and we put in 2 trebles into that same stitch. Now because we're going on the overside, we never skip any stitches along the way, so we capture everything. So wrap and wrap. So by meaning capturing everything is that we're not skipping any stitches. So we're not doing the entire ridge, because you can see that when we did it, we came around and we started already getting into the section over here, and we have to do that in order to keep the sides consistent and equal to each other. So wrap and wrap, going in. So how many groups of 2 are we going to need of these trebles? The answer is 6. So wrap and wrap, wrap and wrap. I always say that in my brain, just so you know. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. See how I'm counting the groups of 2? I find that's just so much easier for me, in order for me not to have to count the stitches on the chain. Because once you run out of the groups, you know that you're pretty well done. Like so. So there should be 6 groups now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups. And you can see where this one is finishing, and look at it compared to the one underneath. You can see that we're almost identical on the other side, which is perfect. So we're going to wrap and wrap, and we're now going to come in the downward position. Okay, going in the down. So we're going to skip the first one, go to the second for a treble. Wrap and wrap, skip the first one, go into the second. Wrap and wrap, skip the first one, go to the second. So how many of these are we going to need? The answer is 5. So I can see that I got 4 so far. So wrap and wrap, just like so. So I can see I have 5 in there by itself, so that's good. And so I should technically have 3 stitches left over if I'm doing this right, and I do. So I'm gonna have to skip the next one, and I want to put 2 trebles, because this would be the very edge. You would have obviously a lot longer to go to make up the size that you're doing for your entire Afghan. Mine is just a sampler, and there's going to be 3 groups of 2 trebles in the final 3 stitches. So don't forget, this does count as one, that final. So if you think you're out of stitches, make sure you do count that final one, just like so. So what we're gonna just do is that you would just continue all along. So if you don't want to change your color, you just keep doing what I've just showed you of the double crochet and doing the fan work. And then if you're gonna change color, this is how I'm gonna suggest that you do it. So I'll come right back with a new color. So on my particular sample, I changed the color every time I was in the double crochet line. It just made sense. It's just followed the pattern apparently to what I wanted. So I'm gonna change the color, but I've already finished off my last stitch. So I want to unfinish just the last 2 loops. So I just have 2 loops left on my crochet hook. So I'm just reversing out. And so instead of finishing it, I would leave 2 on there. And now what I'm gonna just do is that I'm gonna create a slip knot. You're not supposed to do this, but I do it for myself, is that I create a slip knot. And I want to create a long enough slip knot so that I can hide in my yarn afterward. And I will tell you a little bit more about that in a second. So I'm gonna slip the yarn on right now and finish that last stitch with the new yarn, like so. And I've already cut the pink yarn off camera. So I'm gonna just show you here what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna turn my work, and I told you this is the double crochet line. So I'm gonna trap in my yarn strands. So I'm gonna move these strands to the back and come around from the back end. They're out of your way, they're just easier if they're behind your work, and you pull everything nice and snug and tight. So now that we're ready, we're going to chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And this is just like you were doing it as if you were not changing color. So we immediately are just gonna double crochet ourselves. This time what I want you to do is that I want you to put the stragglers on top of the line like so. And what that's gonna do is gonna bury it underneath. So this is just a double crochet. So we just move along, every stitch gets a double crochet, and just keep moving those stragglers so that they're underneath of the stitch. And I would strongly recommend in this one here that you do about 2 inches before you can safely say, well, you know what, those strands are good to go. Now when you're changing the color back when it comes to the fans, the color change is not so simple because there's really not much to grab onto. So I'm gonna be showing you that in just a moment on the other side, is what to do with that, because you're gonna have to get a darning needle out in order to hide these strings really perfectly without having your work fall apart. So now that I think I have enough in there, I'm gonna just stop burying those in, and I'm just going to double crochet as normal all the way across. So yes, so you have to hide in those yarn strings every time you change a color, but it's no different from any other project that you do where you just gotta do what you gotta do. So continue to double crochet all the way across. Meet you back up, we're gonna do another color change, and I'm gonna show you how to bury that color as well, because that one is the one that you have to pay attention to the most because there's not a lot to grab onto. So I've come all the way back, and essentially I have the last chain. So don't forget that last chain, and I want to change the color. So like before, I do not want to finish the stitch. I want to keep it so that there's 2 left on the crochet hook today. So what I'm gonna just do is that I'm gonna snip off the blue, and I want the blue to be about 18 inches. Be generous, because you're gonna need a darning needle in order to fasten that in completely without worrying about it falling apart, especially if you're having a child use this. Create another slip knot with your new yarn and slip it onto your crochet hook. This is a great way to prevent it from falling apart, like so. So let's turn our work now, and we have the new string on board. We have to put the stragglers in behind. So I'm gonna capture a few of the stragglers right in the very beginning, and I'm gonna show you what the problem is so that you can address it. It's really not a problem as long as you know to look for it. So to start off with, we're gonna chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing exactly what we've done down here. The only difference is that we have to worry about this color change. So we're gonna wrap and wrap first, and we come into the same stitch that's originating out of, and we trap in our strings just like we have been for a treble. So wrap and wrap, going into the next one, trap those strings in. We're doing 2 in that one as well because we're doing the semi arc. Wrap and wrap, going into the third, wrap and wrap, and like so. So the problem exists right here is that there's not enough string to hold that from falling out. See, the blue can just fall out really easily. So what I need you to do is just take those yarn strings and put them off to the side, and at the end of your project you're gonna take a darning needle and just just weave it inside the stitches so that they capture in completely. Once you do that, they are good to go forever. So to begin again, we're just gonna wrap and wrap, and we just skip the first stitch, go to the second. So this is already what you know. And skip the next stitch, go to the second. And how many of these singles do we need like that? 5. Oops, excuse me, drop my stitch. So I always go wrap and wrap in my brain. So the trick to this Afghan is just to have a visual idea on what you're doing with your stitches to prevent you from over counting, because when we count we waste time. But if you can visualize what you're supposed to look for, okay, I see 5, it's good to go, you're good to go then. So wrap and wrap, we're now done our 5 there. We're now gonna just skip the next one and start immediately going into the top of the arc. So how many of our groups of 2 are we gonna have there? We're gonna have 6 groups of 2 trebles each. And remember that you're not skipping any chains on that, you're just directly going right above, and because of that it appears more solid. So if you didn't already clue on that, that's just how it works. And I keep dropping my stitches. Wrap and wrap, wrap and wrap, wrap and wrap. So there should be 6 groups of 2 trebles each by the time I'm done. So I do a whack, and a whack meaning a lot of them before I kind of count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't technically really count as I go, I just look for the groups. Okay, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm immediately coming down the other side. So wrap, wrap and wrap, skip the first chain, go to the second. Wrap and wrap, skip the first chain, go to the second. Skip the first chain, go to the second. Skip the first chain, go to the second. How many of these are going to be by themselves? The answer is 5. You would think in a pattern like this that they would both be the same as 6 and 6, so at least I came to that conclusion, but it actually doesn't work out if it's even number. That's why it's like it is. So we have a total of 3 stitches left, but in this case I think that I've skipped a stitch or something is going on, which I can see my problem is right in the very beginning. So here's a great example. Here's my chain, and then the next one is right here, and what I just did is that I put one here but I forgot to get that second one. So if that happens to you, you know, it's all about figuring how to cheat. What I would do is not worry about skipping that one before starting that side. I would just go into the next one available to you. You know what, even as crochet artists that we are, we have to learn to be able to flub a pattern and be able to make it work for you sometimes, as long as it's not obvious, and you know nobody would know the difference anyway other than yourself unless you showed it to them. So wrap and wrap. So that's a part of being a crochet artist, is to be able to adapt to any issues like that without having to frog all of your work. And frogging means to rip everything out. So essentially what you can do right now is that you see how this line is following through. I left it long like this so then I can address it later to be able to sew it in with the darning needle. So let me show you how to sew it in with the darning needle, and then I'm going to show you how to do the border on this next. So I've turned over my work and I've already fed my darning needle just to save time, and you can see that I have the blue here, and this is where the blue is originating out of. So if you don't have a long enough tail you can't do this. So when what I want to do is that when I go back in the direction, this direction, I want to make sure I'm capturing it into the fibers that are underneath the pink that you will never see. And the best hooks for these are the best darning needles, by the way, for this are the Susan Bates darning needles. These plastic ones are for the birds. So I'm going to go in that direction, and now this time I want to capture it into somewhere else that's not coming out of the same hole. Okay, but I still don't want to be on the other side. You just got to make sure it captures into different layers of the fabric or of the fibers so that it gets stuck, because that's the whole point. So I went in one direction, this is the next, and now I want to come in and go back in the final direction. Now you think to yourself, well, you have to do that on the entire Afghan. It really goes really quick, I have to say. I did my whole other Afghan in about 15 minutes. when I did them all with the whole sides. So now that I've gone 3 times back and forth, I can safely cut that string and I never have to worry about the blue. And then here is the pink, and the pink, remember, we fastened on with a slip knot, so it will not come out. But what I would do then is, if you have a short end like this, I purposely did that maybe, so I'm gonna just slip in my hook or my needle where I want it to go through, and obviously the needle's too big that I can't get this in as if it was over there, so I have to partially put it in, and then I can slip my yarn through like so, and then I can safely just kind of pull it through like that, and then I can safely trim that as well after you did that. So it's a great way to be able to have a really beautiful clean finish without ever seeing where you stopped and started, regardless of what side you're looking at. So in the next part of this tutorial, we're going to start the border. So grabbing my sample, we're ready to do the border. I'm just going to create a slip knot to start, and I'm going to use this. So we're going to look at the Afghan, and I'm going to use my actual one that's in the sample because I left the border for you. So essentially I want to come into the very corner stitch just like this and grab the yarn and pull through like this. Okay, so it says to chain 2, 1 and 2, and I'm going to immediately go down the side, and you can see that the stitch work is not very obvious, but here it is. Okay, so what we're going to just do is that every treble is going to get 3 single crochets down the side of it like that. Every double is going to get 2. So do you see how I'm going into the gapping spaces like so? It's just really quite easy. So the next one here, this is a treble, so how many? Gonna get 3. 1, 2 and 3. Okay, the next one is a double, so there's 1 and 2, and so the next one then is the triple, so 1, 2 and 3. So it's just very easy to go down your entire Afghan like that. A very no-brainer. It's really quite simple. Once you get to the bottom, you're going to turn the corner, and it's just really easy to turn the corner, and all you're just going to do then is that every stitch that you will do will be a slip stitch. So it says work chain 2 to get around the corner, and then slip stitch into each one. And remember that a slip stitch is, if this was a stitch, I would just pull the yarn through and through. So very easy, just like that. So you want to think about your color patterns when you're going to do this. You know, the pink's not going to look too bad on this. I might actually do it white just to keep it consistent, and then it's overall really quite fabulous. Until next time, I'm Mikey on behalf of redheart.com as well as the Crochet Crowd. Stay tuned as we have more baby projects coming up in the near future. Until next time, we'll see you.